The phrase, strain at a gnat but swallow a camel, comes from a teaching of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. It's a powerful metaphor that illustrates the hypocrisy of focusing on small, insignificant matters while neglecting much more important issues. To understand this concept and its application to Christians today, let's break it down using Bible passages and contemporary applications. Matthew 23 verse 24, You blind guides! You strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. In this verse, Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees and religious leaders of his time. He is accusing them of being hypocritical in their spiritual practices. This metaphor highlights how the Pharisees were concerned with minor, trivial details of the law, like avoiding consuming a tiny gnat, while at the same time ignoring much more significant issues of justice, mercy, and faithfulness, symbolized by the much larger camel. Historical and cultural context. In Jewish law, there were specific dietary restrictions found in the Old Testament, especially in Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14, regarding what animals could or could not be eaten. Among these restrictions, both gnats and camels were considered unclean and were forbidden to be consumed. However, a gnat was extremely small, and a camel was large and cumbersome. Jesus uses the image of a gnat, which a person would typically filter out from their drink, since it might accidentally fall in, and contrasts it with the camel, a large animal that one would obviously not want to swallow. The Pharisees, in their meticulous observance of the law, were often so concerned with the smallest details, such as straining out a gnat from a drink, that they overlooked the larger, more essential aspects of the law, like justice, mercy, and faith. Other Bible passages related to the concept. Matthew 23 verse 23, Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin. But you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter, without neglecting the former. Here, Jesus is pointing out the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. They were very meticulous about tithing even the smallest herbs from their garden, but they ignored the more crucial aspects of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. This is closely related to the idea of straining at a gnat but swallowing a camel, focusing on small matters while neglecting the larger, weightier issues. Luke 11 verse 42, Woe to you Pharisees, because you give God a tenth of your mint, rue, and all other kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone. This passage further elaborates the concept that focusing on tiny details, like tithing herbs, is not the primary goal of the law. The Pharisees should have focused more on the heart of the law, love for God and justice for others. Isaiah 1 verses 11 to 17, The multitude of your sacrifices, what are they to me? Says the Lord. Stop bringing meaningless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. Learn to do right, seek justice. Defend the oppressed. In this passage, God criticizes the people of Israel for focusing on rituals and sacrifices while neglecting the more important issues of justice and care for the oppressed. This highlights the same concern that Jesus had with the Pharisees, prioritizing external acts without addressing the heart and essence of God's commands. Application to Christians today. 1. Focus on what truly matters. Jesus' metaphor of straining at a gnat but swallowing a camel challenges Christians today to examine their priorities. It's easy to get caught up in minor or external religious observances, whether it's following certain rules, traditions, or customs, while neglecting the core teachings of the Bible, such as love, justice, mercy, and humility. For example, Christians might focus on outward behaviors like church attendance, dress codes, or specific rituals, but ignore the deeper matters of loving others, seeking justice, or forgiving those who wrong us. Application. Christians today should ask themselves whether they are more concerned with outward appearances or whether they are truly cultivating a heart of compassion, love, and justice. Are we focusing on the gnats of faith, like minor theological disagreements or personal preferences, while ignoring the camels, such as caring for the poor, loving our neighbors, and pursuing justice? 2. Beware of hypocrisy. The Pharisees' behavior was hypocritical. They were quick to point out the small faults in others, but they overlooked their own larger failings. This can happen to Christians as well. It's easy to judge others for their perceived sins or imperfections while ignoring our own weaknesses. Application. Christians should strive for self-examination and humility, being aware of our own faults before pointing out the faults of others. As Jesus teaches in Matthew 7 verses 3-5, we should remove the plank from our own eye before addressing the speck in someone else's. 3. The heart of the law, love and justice. The overarching message of Jesus' teaching is that outward actions, while important, should never overshadow the heart of God's law. Micah 6 verse 8 succinctly states, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." Application. Christians are called to focus on what is truly important, loving God and loving others. Our faith should not be about following rules for the sake of rules, but about embodying justice, mercy, and love in our daily lives. This requires prioritizing relationships with others over ritualistic observances and considering how we can serve and love those around us. In conclusion, the phrase, "strain at a gnat but swallow a camel," warns against the tendency to focus on trivial matters while neglecting the weightier issues of faith. Jesus uses this metaphor to confront the hypocrisy of religious leaders who were more concerned with outward rituals than with true godliness and compassion. For Christians today, this teaching is a reminder to prioritize the heart of God's commands, love, mercy, and justice, over superficial or legalistic practices. It calls for self-reflection and a commitment to living out the deeper truths of the gospel in both our relationships with God and with others. Thank you for watching. If this teaching blessed you, give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs encouragement. Subscribe for more biblical truth and faith-building messages. This is Kingdom Pattern.